Can you guys see the screen online? Lisa, you're first up. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yes, good evening, everyone. Thank you so much, Jed. I'm honored to be on this call and share. As a Virgin Islander, I was born in New York, but raised in St. Croix. I've had several businesses, and two of my brothers and sisters were born in St. Croix. I went to Good Hope, and I love my island. And as we'll share with us, we'll talk about why we left, but we also should sequel why we should come back. So I can't wait for that one, Jed. Thank you, everyone. It's a pleasure. Looking forward to this discussion.
We're going to talk about that as well. Next up, we have Dexter Hippolyte, who was an engineer with WAPA and left within the last few years to seek employment in Texas. Dexter?
Good evening, everyone. My name is Dexter Hippolyte. I was born also in the Virgin Islands on the island of St. Croix. I graduated from the St. Croix Educational Complex, and after that attended the University of the Virgin Islands. I was one of the lucky Virgin Islanders that received the 2006 Alva McFarland Scholarship, where I studied electrical engineering. So I got my bachelor's in New York at Columbia University, and I was that fortunate Virgin Islander who had a job immediately home. So I worked at the Virgin Islands Water and Power Authority. I worked for basically 10 years. And at that point, I reached a point in my career where I kind of wanted to see more and wanted to test overseas. So I decided to apply and got a job offer to consult. I think what made me feel strong about consulting was working with the consultants while I was at WAPA. I think personally for me, in the later on in the years in my career, consultants was doing exactly what we told them. So they would ask us many questions, and when I would read the reports, that's what's in the report, exactly what we told consultants. So I felt confident doing it abroad. And currently, I do electrical engineering in many states. I do a lot of the projects that I do at WAPA and more. And it's very nice for me because when I tell them what we're doing in the Virgin Islands, the utilities in the States are just surprised. So WAPA is on the right track with what they do. And I'm just glad to make that move because I currently talk to my colleagues and keep in touch, and I always share what I know. I'm an open book, and that's what's about me. Thank you.
Thank you, Dexter. Next up, we have Anna Watt.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Anna Watt here from sunny Florida. I originally grew up, born and raised in St. Croix. I went to Alexander Henderson and then moved on to Good Hope School where I graduated. And then after that, I moved to the States for college, studied mechanical engineering at the University of Virginia. Shortly after that, moved to Florida. I started working for Verizon, and have been there ever since and have loved it. I also love home. Home will always be home. I visit at least 4 or 5 times a year. I've debated this topic with a lot of my circle of friends in terms of how can we move back? When can we move back? How can we make money if we move back? It's a topic of heated debate and conversation. We all have different ideas. I'm really looking forward to hearing, what comes out of this because I think there are a lot of uh, you know, people in my similar situation that really would love to be back home, right? But it's just that transition and how do you continue, you know, uh, progressing and having a decent living, right? So and supporting your family. So looking forward to the conversation.
Thanks, Anna. Next up, we have Rebecca Best. Rebecca?
Hi, good evening. Tough act to follow with all of the other panelists. I do believe that I am the only person representing St. Thomas on the panel thus far. So I have a lot to live up to at this point. First of all, thank you so much, Jed, and to the other panelists for participating in this and bringing this forum to fruition. Again, my name is Rebecca Best. I come from the island of St. Thomas. I am a Charlotte O'Malley graduate. Go Chicken Hawks. Um, I did leave the island for higher education, um, and I've been trying to get back just about ever since. Uh, while I've been in the States, I've primarily worked with or in policy writing in multiple states, and such notable topics as Medicaid and medical marijuana and vouchers for SNAP, that sort of thing. So I help write the policies that inform how those programs are distributed in the various states. Or I did until a couple of years ago when I transitioned fields to emergency management right after Irma and Maria. I had a wake up call and an opportunity to join the emergency management team in my home state. And so I took it. I, and I have been working on initiatives to help Virgin Islanders get prepared for
Making every last one.
get prepared for upcoming disasters and then recover from those disasters once they occur. So that's just a little bit about me, and I'm very happy to be here.
Thank you. And if you're not speaking, please put your computer on mute or your phone on mute.
Oh, yes. I actually
Thanks, Rebecca. Next up, we have Kareem Jackson. Yeah, I think it's Kareem. All right, so
Hey, good afternoon. Good evening. Good evening.
how you doing, Kareem? Tell us a little bit about yourself.
I'm good. Hi, I'm Karim from the Virgin Islands. I was born and raised in St. Croix. Left from educational complex to come to the States due to various reasons that we're going to get into. But went to New England Tech for a few years, got my degree in automotive. Went to SEC in Florida and got my drafting and designing degree. And been up in the States ever since. Moved to Orlando, Florida. I work for GM, a GM dealer, and I'm a master tech there. I also own my own cleaning business, and that's basically me in a nutshell. But I've born and raised down in St. Croix, lived there all my life, seen a lot of different things, and basically it's pretty sad that what's going on in St. Croix, why I'm on this panel, and hopefully see things turn around.
Well, thanks, Kareem, for sharing that, and that's a good segue. If you could, in your estimation, and the other panelists are welcome to join in, what is your analysis of the kind of state of affairs of St. Croix and the Virgin Islands at large?
I think that over the years, what I've seen is things has been going down more and more, from the police department to education to, you know, how the island is just going down over and over every time I go home. I have thought of coming home and opening a business a couple times, but every time I go home, it's changed for the worse every single time I've went home. I've not seen any growth on the Virgin Islands, which is pretty sad because my whole family is from the Virgin Islands. I've seen too many killing, too many deaths in the past few years, and I have a daughter, I have a wife, so raising my kid down there, unfortunately, is not something I would want to do. You know what I mean? But I love my island, and I would love to one day bring my daughter back home so she could enjoy what I once used to call home.
Thank you for sharing that. And I would also like to mention that Kareem is great grandson or grandson of David Hamilton Jackson, the labor leader from St. Croix. Would anybody else like to chime in on that? What's it like when you're visiting, as you read and keep in touch with the news from afar? What's your analysis of what's going on in St. Croix or in St. Thomas or in St. John?
So I'll be happy to jump in. I myself frequent the Virgin Islands a lot. I come down. I was just there for Carnival. I've been to the Virgin Islands, lived the Virgin Islands, love the Virgin Islands. I've been back twice to open a business, twice. I'm going to try a third time, Jed. Hopefully this session does something and convinces me to come back. But we'll talk more about that. But most people's perception, I live in Atlanta, most people's perception of the Virgin Islands is paradise. It just depends what lens you look through. You know, all cities, all areas have issues. City of Atlanta has plenty of issues. Nepotism, it's got crime, it's got politics, it's got corruption. It's just like any place else. The challenge is we love our island so much that we care so much, and all that noise and what's happening makes us feel away. But the average person, when you say you're from the Virgin Islands, they're like, oh my God, I love it. I visited, I had a great time. But they never stay long enough to be a Virgin Islander. So I always defend my island. I love my island. I'm wearing IB right now. I love everything about the Virgin Islands. It's just that we have some issues, just like everybody else we have to deal with, but we have to come together. And it's a shame that we are further than we are. And we can talk about some things that we want to do, but overall, people love the Virgin Islands. They visit it, they have a good time. They do get frustrated, you know, with a couple of issues that we'll talk about later. But overall, St. Croix, St. Thomas, St. John has a lot to offer. We just have to dig a little deeper and make our light shine.
Thanks.
I'd like to chime in, if I can, Jed.
Go ahead.
All right. So I don't visit home as much as some of the other panelists.
Why
For
not?
quite a few years in a row, I didn't visit at all. So my perspective comes from what used to be there? Oh, this used to be there. That used to be there. And I was like, when I come back, so many things that I remember, so many things that I was fond of, so many businesses that I could never imagine living without are no longer there. And what's worse still is that they haven't been replaced with something else. There's just a vacancy. And so I'm bringing my family and my friends and my loved ones from up here home to try to express to them what was so wonderful about growing up in St. Thomas, what was so wonderful about being a Tomian. Why do I have so much pride? But when I get down there to show off what existed in my head, what I know is supposed to be there, I get there and there's nothing there, you know? Primarily, another issue that really touched home for me is I recently had two little ones. And up here, we are constantly on the go doing child appropriate things, right? Even if that means just going to a local park. And when I took my littles home the last time, there wasn't a park that didn't have, overgrown bushes, or the swinging broke, or, there wasn't some exposed metal. I don't want them to scratch up themselves. You know what I mean? There wasn't an environment, a safe environment where that was well upkept that I could take my children to. They didn't have space that was specific and uniquely designed for them. So those two things, the used to be, what used to be there, and the fact that there isn't a whole lot there for the youth. And that doesn't just refer to places to go, that refers to programs for them to join. I remember when I was growing up, I went 4-H. I don't think the 4-H program exists down there anymore. Civil Air Patrol, I was in that too. It really doesn't exist anymore. And so there aren't programs for my kids to join and learn about their culture and learn about themselves and each other anymore. And that's kind of a drag for me.
Um, can I go, Jed?
Yeah, sure, sir. You got a very interesting story because you were here for a while, very recently, and then you decided
Yeah.
to leave.
So I love the Virgin Islands, and even up in the States, sometimes we get asked the question like in team building, where's your favorite place to visit? And frankly, I've said the U.S. Virgin Islands, and that would all the time I've said that. And I recently went for December. I went in December, January, and I went in February. And yes, it's tough because it's 4 tickets that has to be purchased. So that's one of the things that a lot of us from away have to experience. We have to experience that high ticket cost. I found like, well, true. I like to share solutions. So I'd like to share this. Why is Puerto Rico like? Sometimes we fly to Puerto Rico and get way cheaper tickets to the Virgin Islands, and that interconnections with Silver Airs is very helpful. But look at what's happening with that airline. So we don't want that to go away because that's a solution to save money for us to come back home and see our families and things like that. I really enjoyed the festivity. I really enjoyed the stuff that's being done for kids now. I think both the village and the fair are now doing a lot of activities for the kids. If you guys see what West Girl is doing, she's doing a lot for the U.S. Virgin Islands. Recently at the Ag Fair, it was new to me. I saw the Children's Museum, so that was very neat to see a lot of kids having a nice place to do some things, and hopefully in the near future there's funding that could be there to help with solutions to come about to the Virgin Islands. Typically for me, what I like to do when I visit, um, I just shop local. So I go to the farmers, I buy the cucumbers, I buy everything from them, and like for me, I just want to support local whenever I visit. Juice, I know all the juices that's in the gas stations. I support that. I don't buy anything from like from coming from away. Any type of juice, that's what I buy. I introduce my kids to those local juices as well. But I think there are some things that are tough. It was very surprising to me. Like when I came, it was very emotional because it was very emotional for me as well. And I was there when no trash was being picked up. That it was just so sad. And sometimes I used to ask questions in my head, like if I had an old pickup truck, I'm telling my neighbor, hey, like, you want like, can I throw your trash? I'm that type of person. I'm not gonna wait. And I think a lot of times we have that complacency in the Virgin Islands. Like we can do solutions, but we choose not to. We already know our government is broke and the yonders and what they do. But if we could help out, it's better. It's like don't wait. Don't wait, but be a part of the solution sometimes. I know it's tough, but it's your home. The Virgin Islands is lovely. It's being in Houston, Texas. It's always humid. I like to run, and there's days when I'd be like, I'm not gonna run today because the air quality is terrible. In the Virgin Islands, you can run every day, and it's nice. That's one of the best things that we have. We have that island beauty. We need to protect it. We need to keep it for the generations to come. I'll stop there and let someone else go. But we have a lot of time to talk about other stuff.
Thanks, Dexter. I mean, as you guys can see, this panel is very successful in all of the fields that they've chosen. So my question to you guys, if you were to go back and talk to your 18-year-old self, what sort of advice would you give them on whether to stay in the Virgin Islands or leave and thrive as you have done?
I think I think it's wise to, because the educational system down there is not great. And I think going away to get an education and coming back to, you know, help out is the way to go if you want to go that route, if you want to move back home. I think we are lacking businesses on St. Croix that's needed. And like the lady says, Lisa said, you know, she been on St. Croix, open a business 2 times, about to be the 3rd time. I admire her, to be honest, but it's hard. It's very hard because it's like, where do you get the help on St. Croix? You know, everybody want to, you know, keep things to themselves and, you know, have your hand in your pockets. You know what I mean? Seeing how we was raised and the mentality down there, I just feel like it has to change to make people want to move back home, to want to be there. You know, we don't talk about the corruption and the stuff with the police force and stuff. A lot of stuff is going on down there that needs to change in the police force. And I think like something like a solution, like he said, is like go to a different island and bring some other people in, because too much people know each other down there and they just keep swinging this around in circles.
Fair point.
So,
Anybody?
yep. So Jed, I was 18. I didn't go to college. I started a business. It was called Riptide, the hottest reggae club in St. Croix. This was years ago. I'm telling my age. But back then, the overhead was low. Payroll, cost of goods. We had a small space. We were open limited hours. But I had an entrepreneurial spirit. There's a lot of people that don't go to college that have an entrepreneurial spirit, but don't know how to make it work. There's lots of opportunities right now. Not everybody's going to go to college, but our young people have nothing to grasp or nothing to aspire for. They want to get off the island as soon as they're 18. There's nothing to keep them unless, you know, they stay local and they love their island, or maybe they got a good scholarship to go to the University of the Virgin Islands. But I think we need to offer our youth and try to empower them a little more. And there's lots of programs available for that. Actually, our mayor, Andre Dickens, is doing a great job. Year of the Youth. He's in his 3rd year. Lots of opportunities. But if there's no mentorship and nobody's showing our youth how to thrive, not survive, you know, there's online courses, there's trade, there's all types of opportunity. And I think that if we focus on the negatives, I try to be as positive. Yes, we have issues. Yes, we have problems, but we can't focus it. We have to be the catalyst to make the change. You know, there's lots of things that we can do, but collectively we can't do it unless we all collaborate and take the effort to do it. You know, that we have a sickness in our island, and it's called urgency and efficiency. You know, we have a tomorrow mentality. Oh, we'll get it done tomorrow. I'll see you tomorrow. No, let's do it today. You know, let's get things done today, because tomorrow is not promised. So I think if we can get more opportunities for the youth, they'll stay. They'll open their businesses. They'll fill those gaps, like Rebecca said, of businesses that we don't have right now in the Virgin Islands.
Yeah, and you know, just to kind of chime in here, your question about what would I tell my 18-year-old self? Honestly, it's you know, Lisa mentioned it. Once you graduate, yes, you know, you have the University of Virgin Islands, but your options are limited. I think if we expanded education, we and you know help the education system, I think we got to start there. There's many layers to this problem, and I think education. Any strong economy starts off with a good, solid education, because you're reinvesting in your younger generation who can then bring, you know, better ideas and hopefully stay and, like you said, open up those businesses. But you know, every time I visit home, I talk to a lot of people who have attempted to open businesses, who have businesses, and they struggle. I mean, I was trying to buy property back home. I wanted to, you know, have something back home, right? And even that was a struggle. If you buy something, Let's say you bought a property, you want to renovate it. I've heard people waiting up to 10 years for permits, right? Just to get a permit to renovate a property. And every angle I look at, one, how do you make money? We need a growth engine. We need investments in terms of jobs, right? If we don't have jobs to sustain families and people, I mean, visiting is one thing. I love visiting. I love seeing the island. I love the beach. I love everything about St. Croix. But living there, it's tough when you can't, you can't see the opportunity to make and grow there, right? And so I think starting with the education system is definitely a layer to this solution. Picking a lane in terms of where do we see opportunities for businesses to grow? How do we support small businesses, right, to make it easier for them? And and just invest in these businesses and people who want to come home and do something and earn a decent living, right? Your gentleman mentioned the law enforcement. I think that's another angle. Absolutely. You have to enforce, policies, and you have to enforce, and it's gonna take, one of my friends mentioned, prior to me jumping on here, he mentioned, a lot of times we look to hire locals for certain jobs, right? And that's great. But at the same time, are they the best qualified? And sometimes the best qualified, who comes with the best ideas, they may not be local, and we have to be open to that, right? There has to be a balance of that. Agree, but we also have to look for solutions, and that solution may not be somebody who's local, and that's okay, right? So I think there's different angles here that we can take back and just approach these problems, but definitely need to figure out that strategy.
Yeah, and I think you hit a nerve. You're about to start a riot in the Virgin Islands because that's a very controversial take. A lot of people believe that, locals, St. Tonians, Crucians, St. Johnians have to have the job. And me
Right.
personally, I'm all for giving our qualified local people jobs. But if we don't have a qualified local person, I'm of the ilk that we look elsewhere, right? I always joke when I get on
Yeah.
the plane, I don't care who they're in the cockpit. I'm just trying to get to
Yeah.
where I'm going safely, on time, and for a decent price. But it's interesting here. I spent some time on the WAPA board, and that I saw some issues with that where you had people without we had someone that was in finance that didn't even have a finance degree or any sort of finance experience, and I'm like, well, this isn't going to go well. But so that's a very controversial take. I wanted to let you know that.
Yeah, I get it. I understand. And I I worked in WAPA one summer. I worked at Hovensa. I worked at the IRS, and I worked with, in what I saw in teams that were doing well, whether it was engineering, whether it was finance, teams that did well, wanted to do well. It was a mix. They had the dynamics. It was a mix of ideas, a mix of background, both local and not local, right? And honestly, that they were small groups within a bigger, environment. And unfortunately, those things just, over the years, just didn't transpire all the way through, right? But I think it definitely takes a mix, and who's best qualified at that point, right?
I agree. Give it up for Anna. This is one of my favorite former classmates. She went from Campo Rico to a senior manager at Verizon. You didn't think I was going to tell them that.
Hi, West Side. Yep.
So if you were to give advice to the governor or the senators, anybody, any of our decision makers, what would you tell them they should be doing or trying to do to attract more Virgin Islanders to come back home?
How much time do we have?
Honestly, incentivize. It builds incentives. We were chit-chatting, as you said, this conversation really took flight. And so we were having these conversations on social media. We were having them in our households. We were having them, I personally was having them with my Yankee friends. Hey, like what would make me, feel comfortable moving back home? And it really boils down to incentives, right? Even if, and I know that this might be a little far-fetched, but I was looking at there's a pageant in one of our sister islands in the archipelago, and winners of the pageant have an opportunity to win, right? Not only the crown for the year, but they're winning I think a fourth of an acre of property on the island that they are representing. You know what I'm saying? So small things, well, not small, but things like that, right? If a person, okay, you want to study abroad because you've never been off of the island for any substantial amount of time and you want to see what else is out there, that's fine. But come back home. And when you come back home, you prove that you are born and raised, Virgin Islands native. You work in the Virgin Islands for the Virgin Islands for, a series of years that's determined by the program, and then the Virgin Islands gives you a quarter acre of land. You know what I mean? Like some kind of incentive like that. That's just my 2 cents.
Thanks, Rebecca. Anybody else got some thoughts?
Yes. Since I don't like to talk politics, but the strength is in numbers. As I know, the strength is in numbers, but we have 15 senators. That's like, you can't even talk that language to people in the United States, because if we had 15 senators doing their job, all of them collectively would be in a better place. So we need to limit that number. That's the first thing we need to do, limit the number. Then we have companies like EDC that bring companies in. We have local companies, like Rebecca was saying, called Invest in St. Croix, or some sort of tax allocation dollars, some sort of system to incentivize people to invest in Atlanta. To invest in St. Croix, St. Thomas, and St. John. We know the different islands have their different economics, their different, GOP, they're different. One has tourism, agriculture, all types of things. But we don't have some sort of incentive or some sort of guide or some sort of path for others to come down and follow and be successful here. So I think we need to figure out how we can do that. The government, I know we have a lot of government jobs in our islands, which is a challenge too, because we talked about they hire who they like, family. But if we can limit and get more quality instead of quantity, I think we would do more service and justice to our islands.
All right. So I think I just want to help kind of reframe, how does the government get Virgin Islanders like yourself, talented Virgin Islanders, back home?
They got to stop putting all the roadblocks to open business. Every time you try to open a business, there's a roadblock. For some reason, I don't know. I know I do a lot of reading and a lot of self-help books and a lot of mentality. We have to change the way we think for us to make change in our lives. When I opened Flex, it took me 3 weeks to get my license. People were shocked I got my license. You know what I did? Every single day I went to licensing. Every single day. That's what I had to do to get it done. Most people, they don't have the time or the emotional stability to deal with that. That's why they leave the island. So if you're going to open a business, there should be some one-on-one how to open it. If there's 10 kids in high school, they want to open a business, show them how to do the LLC, show them how to get the space, show them how to set up. Like, there's nothing to incentivize or get people to invest.
Okay, thank you for that. Anybody else?
I mean, it seems like we touching base on like coming back to own businesses, but so let's say that's done and there's the incentives. We still have to talk about the lifestyle and living in the Virgin Islands that every single island experiences. So I'm gonna touch on the utilities. So touching base on that. As you know, the quickest way to trickle down an economy is gas prices, because that is involved in the price of everything, and I'm glad for that. Social media owner King Cutters, they did a good job at explaining in a high level way how gas is priced in the U.S. Virgin Islands, and there has always been a lot of talks about that. But again, U.S. Virgin Islands, we have to come up with the solution because we live there. Even us abroad, are feeling for you guys with that type of pain. It's $2.49 in Houston, Texas. Like that's how cheap gas is. It's $60 a barrel is the price of oil. So that should have been trickled down in the U.S. Virgin Islands because the prices I've been there many times. The prices stayed the same for that 2 years that I visited the island, and it trickles down on food. It will trickle down on just everything. But also, I think we also want to see or see that plan come to play where the again so there's gas, you have water, you have electric. You want to make sure that you're getting that constant bill so that you can plan your life, plan your trips. It's not just about working and paying your bills. We have to enjoy life. We have to spend time with family. We have to visit St. Thomas when it's carnival. We have to visit St. John when it's carnival. We have to visit the States. And those are tough decisions to make when you constrain. So see, constantly telling the people and showing the people like, hey, the path forward is coming. Like, keep giving us updates. Like, sometimes we try to find information on ODR websites. It's a little bit tough to find. So, what maybe do some outreach for people to find that so that we can feel comfortable with the progress, feel comfortable with the projects that's happening. I think a lot of Virgin Islanders just don't feel that comfort zone. Like, we do know of all the projects happening. We just don't feel that comfort zone at times with everything's happening. It's it's again, let's talk about the internet. That's another one, right? We all have to pay that. Recently, the one that we all know that we grew up with, they changed the name many times, but the price went up, but the service is still the same. I think for the senators and the governor, like there's things that we have to ask. Like within that, the internet goes when the power goes, but you pay a $7.99 bit on your bill. That's supposed to pay for the generators to keep the internet running when the power goes. So are they doing that? That's the kind of questions I would like the senators to ask, but they don't ask that. When they have those folks who make the decisions on the floor, those are things that we want to see. And I think if we see those things, we feel comfortable going back home because it's not just still about owning a business. Everybody can't do it. The Virgin Islands is a small economy. Some people is gonna work at the government, some people gonna open up their own business. But what I would tell people too is if you're opening up your own business, sometimes you have to think national now. You can't just think Virgin Islands because the way things is going, like you can open up a business and still have clients in the States. If you try to just focus on the Virgin Islands, you kind of you're just constraining yourself just there. But there's a lot of opportunities if you think on the national level when opening up your own business. But I think that's another aspect we do have to touch on. If we want to go back home, we have to talk about the utilities, the water. That's another one. We all know it's due to old pipes, but we just want to feel comfortable again, knowing that it's gonna happen by this year. We're gonna see that improvement in quality because these are utilities. I do know utilities are the same across the nation. I was like, I had Hurricane Beryl in Houston, and there was no power for 3 4 days. I was like, what? I left to experience it here too. So it happens, but I think Virgin Islanders just want to know progress and timelines, and can we get it done by that timeline? Because if you don't, usually with projects, you spend more money, and you can't afford to do that.
Thanks, Dexter. All right, I'm going to ask one more question, and we're going to open it up to the audience for some Q&A. We'll try to end on a positive note, so you guys help me out here a little bit. What do you miss most about the Virgin Islands? And do you ever see yourself coming back home?
For me, is what I miss most is people, family, right? Of course, the beach, the beautiful, beautiful beach and water, um, and the food, right? The culture. I mean, I was at Tart Wars last year, and it was, it was something that was fun, and it brought back, like, a lot of childhood, like, banter and and just community and little things like that that you really don't get here, so I miss that. um in terms of, and what was your second part of the question, Jed?
Do you think you'd ever come back home on a full-time basis?
I would love to come back home on a full-time basis. I would love to be able to. And I think if uh jobs were there, if we could figure out how to, make money there, would absolutely be there. We touched on a lot of things. We touched on education is important. That's important for me, important for my kids, right? Strong education and a continuing education. And I think a lot of good ideas were mentioned earlier about incentivizing, building those, like building some platform where if, or support mechanism where if you do want to study abroad, that, hey, you bring back those talents, right? But we're going to support you to do that. We're going to help you to do that, right? Our healthcare system, everybody leaves to come here for healthcare. My parents, they had to have special insurance just to make sure they had a peace of mind that if something happens, they could be airlifted and come here, right? For healthcare. You talk to anyone back home, nobody wants to go to the hospital, right? Why is that? Like, we could have the medical facility built. It's built at UVI, and from what I understand, they're not accredited or they can't open it. I'm not sure what happened there, but things like that, simple. Just invest in the kids, have them educated there, and say, hey, for 3-4 years, work at the hospital, right? Or work abroad and then come bring that here. Just simple things like that. I think we could start with, but would love to come back.
Thank you, Anna.
The thing I miss most about St. Thomas is the cookie frog. The cookie in the night. The most soothing sound you've ever heard in your life. And that is genuinely what I miss the most. All of my relatives and friends know, if I am in a funk, you send me a recording of the cookie frog, and that's going to cheer me up. So that is literally what I would miss the most, or what I do miss the most. What would move me back there on a full-time basis? I actually was trying to move back there on a full-time basis not too long ago. I even, convinced my freshwater Yankee domestic partner to leave all of the luxuries of the United States and move, and we were all ready to go. But I never heard back from a government agency that I was applying with. And I think to answer both questions at the same time, so the last question and this one, what would it take for me to move back is something as simple as a response time from agencies, from government agencies, and from businesses that do exist in the Virgin Islands is taken seriously when those of us who are abroad are reaching out and wanting to come home, offering our services, sending our applications, that sort of thing.
Thank you, Rebecca. I think we've all had that frustration trying to do business with the government, and it has not been as efficient as we're kind of used to in the States. So thanks for sharing that. Lisa, Kareem, you guys want to jump in on this?
I think my favorite thing back home is the beaches, beautiful. I love the culture, family. Um, why would I move back home? That's a hard question for me because the education for my daughter, raising my daughter down there, I just don't see the benefits in it. The healthcare, there's a lot of things that come with it that it's not beneficial to moving back home at this point. So I would say at this point, I would not move back home.
I mean, that's the reality for some folks, right? Some folks move away and never come back. They find, a quality of life that they can't find here in the Virgin Islands, and they decide not to come back home. I knew you'd say that. I know you well enough to know you ain't coming back, but hopefully I could convince you. I still got some time. I still got about 30 years, so I'm gonna keep on working on it. Lisa, what about you?
I love St. Croix. I love St. Thomas. I love St. John. I love the beaches. I love the bush tea. I love the saltfish pate. I love my conch and butter sauce. I love my people. I love the Crucian rum. I love the sand. I love the carnivals. I love everything there's to love about the Virgin Islands, except the basic living in the Virgin Islands. And it's sad that we can't get basic stuff, basic, and we have to work towards that. You talked about utilities, healthcare, education. We've got great agriculture in St. Croix. We should have the best restaurants. It just doesn't make sense to me. And a lot of things aren't connecting. Will I come back? Probably. How will I come back? That'll be a different story. I have had a small business, I've had a big business, I've had an outdoor business. All businesses have been successful. And when I got my first WAPA bill at the gym, it was 12 grand. It took me 6 months to get it down to $3,500. I'm up for the challenge. I'm up to making St. Croix better, but it just can't be me. Like I can't move back and it's going to make a difference. Kareem can't move back. It's going to make a difference. Rebecca we all have to come back, and we have to have a plan and a realistic time frame, because some of the things, and I hate to say that we're looking to change may not change in our lifetime. We have to make that change. And how do we do it? We got to use resources, get outside sources, put our heads together. But I will be back to St. Croix. I had business in St. Thomas. I was there for several years. I lived there. I had 2 businesses actually when I was smaller. I was out in the little vendor plaza on Havenside. So I'm familiar. I love the Virgin Islands, but I have to figure out a plan. And not only a plan, I got to figure out an exit strategy, because I don't know if it'll make it. And that's just a realistic reality of the Virgin Islands. We have so much to offer, but can we withstand it? So I'm going to stay positive. I'm coming back. I just don't know when, Jed. Look out for me, but I just don't know when.
Man, I have one more thing to say. I think we have to start with the kids. Our educational system, everything starts with the kids. And if you change the mind frame of the island with the kids, it changes. It's just not going to change overnight. It's definitely not going to change overnight. But if you keep the kids close and give them education moving forward, I think you could look forward to the future. But if that don't change, then nothing will change on St. Croix. The mentality on St. Croix is very flawed. And it's embarrassing to say. because I love to go home. But bringing people back home and seeing the mentality, you go to Wendy's and it's like, what do you want? Like, I mean, like basic things like that. It's like, come on, you know what I mean? It's embarrassing.
We're about to go Wendy's after this. Who's with me?
They need training from Chick-fil-A.
Yes, right. They do.
That's a fact.
Dexter, any parting thoughts? All right. Well, I want to open it up to the audience here. What's on you guys' mind? I know there's been a lot of conversations over the last 2 weeks online. What are your thoughts here in the room?
I'm not gonna jump in. I think the panel is fabulous. Good evening, it's not my legal. And it's been just a pleasure to hear everybody's perspective. My partner and I have been living here for 8 years now, and we're going through the same issues that people have gone through that grew up here and left. How to bring people back is a question that is the same as how do we create a healthy and vibrant community. And I think that we distract ourselves when we talk about the question of should there be incentives to bring us back or not. Even though you asked about incentives and we heard people say, oh, it'd be great if we got a quarter acre land or we got this. I didn't sense from everybody speaking that that's really what's holding them back. What's holding them back are the fundamental flaws in our community. What's holding us all back are the fundamental flaws in our community. And I've been thinking about this a lot over the last few weeks, especially, and I'm kind of angry about it. I think a lot of people are angry about it because we feel these flaws all the time. And there's some of the flaws that we can't do anything about. And so when we hear our governor talk about it, and he's like, hey, we're trying to solve this, we're trying to solve that. No, I get it. There's some big problems that are going to take a lot of time. And we hear one of the panelists who says, gosh, I wish gas prices were lower, or I wish utility prices were lower, or I wish food prices were lower. Like all of those things are things that we want that probably aren't going to change anytime soon. That's part of being far away from the United States and having extra transportation costs and being a small community and not having that like big market share that you get stateside. But then there's the things that we can change. And those are the things that I'm hearing people say like, gosh, we can do things today, not tomorrow. We can have the attitude where we want to change this. We can have a government that cares about it. When I think about like ball field in Frederickstead, the stadium being built, we squandered $30 million on right now.
You mean the most expensive stadium in the history of the United States?
It's not the most expensive by any stretch of the United Nations, but the most expensive little couple of concrete walls, not much else in the history of the United States, right? Because it's not that big a deal and done. But that's not the issue. The issue is that for 16 years, the two ball fields that were there haven't been there for the kids in the community. And that's the part where I'm like, that's a tomorrow, not today thing. And those issues pile up in our community and aren't addressed by government. It's when you've got to go licensing every day for 3 weeks to get your license, and that doesn't happen. Those are the things that we can change. And those are the things that I'm mad at our governor and our government for not fixing for us, not helping us with. And it's what I actually wish that these people would come home and help us fix. What I think all of us need to fix, because if we all work together, those are the things we can change. And if we would do the things we can change, we would have enough going to the Virgin Islands that it would be a welcoming place for all of us and people would want to be here. And we wouldn't see people fleeing as often. Yeah, there's still going to be issues with medical care. There's still going to be issues with utilities, but these are things we can chip away at while we do fix the things that we can change. And if we can do those, I think we'll come a long way.
Thank you for sharing that, Ryan. Well said.
I really feel I've been there for 16 years now, and I like a lot of things about St. Croix. I really love a lot of things about St. Croix. I think St. Croix is good for certain people at certain times in their life, so to speak. But I find the most fatal flaw that I really have never been able to understand since the day I got here is why is CTEC, the College for Technical Training, not emphasized more with the young people? I'm from Chicago. The Drive was a big booming technical college in Chicago. It was down here for a while and abandoned for whatever reason I'm not quite sure about. But, and I know the people over at CTEC. I know Anton Dukes is the executive director. I think he shares my opinion. The educational system puts their money into education. Well, in my opinion, not everyone wants to be an attorney. Not everyone wants to be a doctor. But these kids down here, they know how to fix a car. They know how to fix a toilet by the time they're 12, 15 years old. And that type of skill is not extrapolated on them in the educational system. I think there's too little money that is put into CTEC. It's a great school. You have all kinds of classes, all kinds of vocations that the kids can get into. Everybody says there's a manpower shortage. We got billions of dollars in this. We don't have enough money to fulfill the jobs and the programs that we have coming down from the federal government. Well, we're not educating the young kids to come in and take over those jobs. Those young kids don't particularly understand being a businessman, but they understand how to fix something. They understand how to be a welder. They understand technical things, and that's the way they were raised here on the island. And that's the great thing about it. But we're not taking advantage of them through the educational system, in my opinion.
Thanks, Mark. Anybody else? The young man in the back.
Yes, good evening, everybody. My name is Don Peterson, and I've been here tonight and I've listened to some of the panelists and we've been members of the audience talk about education and what our kids are like. And one thing I can say is they don't understand finances, okay? When it comes to simple terms like equity or how to use their credit, they're at a loss for it. So now that leaves you with no point or no other avenue but to go into the work system, into the workforce. You know, when you want to be or are supposed to be an entrepreneur. You know, there are a lot of programs, whether it be SBA loans or USDA, plethora of avenues that our young people could take advantage of. And it's, I don't know if it's just not a part of the criteria in the schools, but you know, I think it should be. Financial education is where it's at, and we need to start implementing that.
Well said. Anybody else? You guys, Tammy, what do you think?
I have a son that's in his 30s and he's been away to school and back. That's the island came back and it's been again. And part of its reason is
Well, the audio's not very good. Can't hear.
The microphone, I'm sure about, yeah, that's.
this better. Oh, okay. Okay, good evening again. I have a son that's in his 30s. And he went away to school, he came back, or stayed away for a while, came back, and is leaving again. Part of the reason is he has a young child now and just the quality of life that we have here now is part of his reason. Even the ability to, let me double back. Their mentality is different, where he says to me, I'm not going to slave for anyone like you are, your age group. That's what work for someone. No, I'm going to work for myself, even though it can be a struggle. But basically, their mentality is different. There isn't a real social life here in terms of things to do. And that's part of the reason. Even looking in the government for a job, you have vacancies, you required a bachelor's degree, but you want to pay $40,000 a start. It's not going to happen. And that's part of the reason. They want to be paid for their work. And basically the quality of life. And it's totally different from when I grew up. When I grew up, we knew that we could go to youth commission. We had a summer job. We knew we had summer jobs. Times are different. They think differently, and the quality of life is not the best right now.
Fair enough. I have to agree with what you said. Anybody else?
I could actually jump in, Jed. So I heard they, and I would say they referring to younger Virgin Islanders. So I am technically Gen Z. I was actually working on a PhD at UNC Chapel Hill back in between 2020, 2021, moved back home. And I agree with a lot of what you said. I always tell people St. Croix is a retirement community, unfortunately. For young people, there's not a lot for us to do. But for me, I can't wait for somebody else to come here and make something for me. So at the end of the day, we have to acknowledge that things are going to be tough and it's going to be difficult, but sometimes you have to sacrifice certain things to accomplish something in the future. I think it's also twofold because if I didn't work for the company that I work for now, I wouldn't be here. If I didn't have a job at the RTPark, I would not be here. So I think private sector is the answer. I know there are a lot of Virgin Islanders who live abroad who have multi-million-dollar companies and companies that generate a lot of revenue. So we need to find ways to attract those companies to come back and then offer job opportunities to Virgin Islanders. I think we can't depend on somebody else to answer the questions for us. And if we continue to do that, we're going to lose our place in what is our home. So we got to ask ourselves what's important and how are we going to, accomplish the things that we say we want and the things that we need. So.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Lakia, and I'm around about the same generation as Tahira, but we won't specify. Everyone's path looks different. Everyone's reality looks different. How they were brought up, the circumstances. For me, I was a young mom. I didn't get or take the opportunity to go to college, etc. I was a mom first and last. And so with that, simple things like getting government assistance and getting the runaround for government assistance or the inconveniences. Sometimes it would take months to hear back from them. Meanwhile, me and my children have to survive. I don't have the higher education to get a job that I know maybe I'm intellectually qualified for, but paper-wise, I didn't have the opportunity to go get the degree for it, right? And so the stress that is caused on the people in the community to acquire simple things, it adds to the mental illness that happens here. You know, poverty is very, very intertwined in mental illness. And so when you have this added stress of completing a simple task, it makes people want to run away. It makes you want to leave, you know. And I love home. I grew up in Houston for a little while, came back home, moved away as a young adult, came back home, moved away again, came back home. And no matter what, I always come back home. I'm gonna always come back home. I love my home, just the quality of life, and quality of life is really dependent on the person. I value the beach, I value the breeze, I value the people, I value the small community. If I, you know, my children walking down the street, somebody gonna call me and be like, hey, I just see as I going down such and such. In the States, I don't, no one's accountable. There's no accountability in that way. I love my home, you know, but you also have to choose your stress factors. You know, a young mom raising young boys, there's those are already stress factors in itself. You know, and then to deal with government officials or government employees who are telling you, well, you need to give me a minute, you know, or just having a bad attitude, probably because they're dealing with the same economy that I am. It's painful to be here a lot of times, you know, and just to touch on another perspective, we have had a lot of domestic violence situations, especially as of late. I don't know, you know, who all has, I don't know if, you know, you guys have recently heard about the young lady that just got shot and killed in St. Thomas. By the way, Rebecca, you're not alone. Charlotte Amali, graduate here. I'm from St. Thomas originally. You know,
I recognize the voice. I know exactly who you is, and I can't see you. I know who you is.
You know, domestic violence is a major factor amongst our community, whether we speak about it or we don't speak about it, it's a factor. And not just amongst ours, I'm not singling us out, but it's a major factor nonetheless. And in our economy, a lot of women and men, a lot of victims of domestic violence are forced into situations where they have to couple with a person that may not be safe because they cannot afford to step out on their own. At least not here. They have to, if they're going to leave the situation, they have to leave somewhere where the rent is not $2,500 for a decent one-bedroom apartment in a safe neighborhood where their children can go outside and play and they feel safe about it. You know, there's just this, the economic state and the social state of our economy makes it really difficult to be here and want to stay or to come back. And so I would love to discuss solutions and what that looks like. And a lot of people spoke about incentives, but before we can talk about the incentives and the additional promises, I think we should figure out a way to fulfill the basic promises, you know, like getting our income tax back, like getting the contracts the RFPs that get put out and somebody goes and fulfills the order, and then it takes 20 years to get paid for that job that you already dispensed money, you paid employees out of your pocket, you know what I mean? And you're not getting that money back from the government in an efficient amount of time. So by the time you do get it back, you're done in debt with that money. You know, so the basic promises first, then we could talk about incentives, you know, and how do we shift the mindset of the people? I love starting with the kids. Let's put in some mindfulness exercises in the schools. You know what I'm saying? Like, let's really shift the health and wellness mindset so that we can start to be more go-getters and you know, I love how Lisa, she doesn't take no for an answer. I could see that in her. She shifted her mindset with all of these wellness books and the education that she gave herself. But in such a small community, we should infuse that education in our children so that, you know, they grow with it. So that's my 2 cents.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Jamal Francis. I am 30 years old, and I kind of have the same sentiment as Kareem because I have no children and I'm about to be married soon, God spare life. And my biggest concern is how will I be raising them when they're born? You know, I have been out of high school for about 12, 13 years now. I've been able to make it by, but it's been more difficult than it should be. I am currently self-employed. I have a business. I do photography, video, whatnot. I was previously working at the Department of Agriculture, and I left from there. I don't have a degree in agriculture, but I I just felt like I was being held back. I wanted to make strides to move forward, and I guess there wasn't the same the people above me did not have that same sentiment. And I find that as a young adult trying to make their way, it's just difficult to see all of the red tape in a place where you grew up. Like 7, 8 years ago, I was like, I'm never going to leave St. Croix. This is the best place in the world. Like, we just need this, we just need that, we just need this, we just need that. But going through school, elementary to high school to college, hearing senators say, hey, you guys gonna get this, you guys gonna get that. 2 years go by, we didn't get it. Next 2 years go by, we didn't get it. A decade goes by, still did not get it, and things are getting worse. I truly believe that the US Virgin Islands is a hidden gem on the globe, because if you go pull up a globe right now, you're not going to see us. You have to zoom, 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 and then you find the little specks. But when you come here, you realize, okay, I know where this place is hidden. I know why not many people may know about it, because the people here, we are a unique and special set of people. I know people all over the world say that we all are unique, but there's this thing. Virgin Islanders have this type of pride that it just makes you feel good to be from here. And a lot of my peers are struggling. Some are going away. Some are trying to come back because there's just this desire and comfort of being at home. We can always leave, but I spoke with one of my friends the other day, and he was like, I've been living in the States for about 15 years and I still don't feel at home. But the second I come back on St. Croix, I feel at home, I feel the same too. I personally don't want to leave, but the thought of not being able to provide financially for my possible family is something that, I could make it on my own, but can they? And I am a firm believer in children are the future. People have been saying that to me. I'm no longer a child. And I want to be able to live up to what people have been saying to me. Like, I want to be able to provide for my community. Our current demographic of children from kindergarten to high school and early college, these are some very intelligent kids. I know the media makes it seem like, hey, these kids are probably a little on the spectrum side, but that's not what it is. They live in such a unique era where information and knowledge is at their fingertips, something that not much of us in this room has been able to have. So they're already on a different level of living, but the island is a bit back. So it's going to seem like, hey, these kids are troublesome. No, they're just moving fast. They're ahead of where they are. So now when children want to graduate and leave, it's because, okay, I feel like I was super genius from since 6th grade, but I haven't been able to push my potential. I need to go to the mainland where I can push my potential. Okay, now I push my potential. I been able to acquire a bunch of things. Now, am I going to come home and contribute? Some do. And others, it's like, well, home didn't do anything for me. So it's like, what am I gonna do? So I just come and I visit, get a carnival. I get the things that we do right, and then I go back to business. Um, that's something that has to change. I'm gonna say one more thing. I could talk forever. The Virgin Islands, St. Croix, love to say, oh, Tim Duncan came out of here, We got the Tim Duncan Foundation, we got all of that good stuff, which is so good to have and so good to talk about. We have several Virgin Islanders that are off island that are very successful. We have Virgin Islanders that are on island that are very successful. I think that we need to make more Tim Duncans, We have so much young men in the communities that can be probably Tim Duncan times 25, but we're not going to see that potential unless we come together and push them. It's all a community effort. One hand cannot clap. So now, if we all come together and say, you know what, we really don't like the state that we are living in. We don't like the state that our children are living in. We want better for ourselves. We want a future where we can stand up upright and be happy wherever we are, whether we are off or on island. So, in short, we need to come together. We need to be a community. We need to operate like we just got hit from a Category 11 hurricane, and we need to survive with each other to make it. And then that's when we're gonna see the change. And it needs to be consistent. It can't be, okay, gonna do this for a month. Oh my gosh, I'm tired. I want to watch TV. I want to watch Netflix. No. True change comes from determination and consistency. And without that, we will never reach where we need to reach. And it's so very possible. We have carnival every year. They come together to do that. It's fun. We have agriculture fair every year, come together to do that. It's nice. We are living history. We need to create more history and stop dwelling on what was and what we can maintain and create more and add to what we're maintaining. Thank you.
One thing, Jen, I didn't want to break up the inspiration, but a lot of the times we talk about the government and the fact that the government is the reason the Virgin Islands is the way it is. But I think we need to stop talking about the government like it's some boogeyman and this unknown, and acknowledge that we are the government. The government is my neighbor and my auntie and my grandfather. Yeah, and it's like we have to hold ourselves accountable so that change can happen in the Virgin Islands. And if we want something to happen at the end of the day, we have to do it ourselves. And if we want people to come back like Lisa and Dexter, we have to give them a reason to come back and encourage them and be the example. But at the end of the day, I feel like it's cliche, but it really does start with us. So.
Thank you. What a hell of a discussion. Love all the common themes. I mean, for me, I think it all starts with the economy. A lot of people leave out of necessity, needing to provide for their families. The other thing for me is really healthcare. I've left the Virgin Islands twice myself. That was primarily focused on education, getting a higher degree, and more financial opportunities in the States. But I really want to talk about my mother, who lived and worked. She was a teacher education, and she left the Virgin Islands in her late 60s out of necessity for healthcare. So believe it or not, the Virgin Islands government has great insurance, but we don't have any facilities on island that could help my mother. So after dealing with a couple incidents here on island, our family took it upon ourselves to move my mother to the States, so she could get the help that she needed, right? And as soon as she arrived in the States, They didn't let her leave the hospital for 3 weeks. So it's crazy that while she was living here, she was just kind of going about her business. She'd go to Juan Louis, they'd check her vitals, and they'd send her right back home. But we literally did not have the access to the healthcare that my mother needed to survive. So my mom came up with me and she lived with me for all of 2017. And I'm actually glad, because if she had been here when the storms had happened, it would not have went well. So we had a good time. You know, we take road trips, we go see family. You know, we had a blast. She enjoyed living in the States for what it was. But my mother was a born and bred Crucian. My mother is one of them people that would barely leave Frederickstead. She'd go to Christiansted once or twice a year to go to the lieutenant governor's office, to go to Brady's, but then she's going right back to Frederickstead, right? So she never wanted to live in the States. And after a while, my mother was like, you know, I gotta go back home, right? And I'm like, Mom, you do not have any sort of access to healthcare in the Virgin Islands. But at that point in my mother's life, she was less concerned about access to quality healthcare, and she was more concerned about her access to quality kalaloo. So she wanted to move back, and she fought me tooth and nail to move back. And predictably, you know, once, you know, after a while, she passed, but she passed how she wanted to pass on St. Croix, living a life that she wanted to live. And I can't tell anybody else. I know all folks. Thank you, everybody on the panel, for sharing your stories with us. I personally would love to see each and every one of you guys come back home, because I'm selfish. But right now, kind of echoing Tahira's sentiments, I'm thinking, all right, it's not about the Virgin Islands not doing enough for me. I'm trying to figure out what else can I do for the Virgin Islands, because I can't get vexed at the gentrification if I'm not willing to stand up and claim the land myself, right? I can't get vexed with the poor decisions being made if I'm not willing to take a seat at the table and fight for better decisions to be made. So that's kind of what I hope I can leave everybody with tonight is, how can we help the Virgin Islands? We can't get vexed with the politicians because we elected them. And if you're not happy with the politicians, you can become a politician yourself, right? We you know, like, so this place is so small and so fragile and so beautiful. I do not want to lose it. So please, please, we need the help. We can't have everybody leave. I want all of you guys to come back. And I hope you can join us for the next discussion, why we stayed, because believe it or not, a lot of us are still here. Thank you.
Thank you, Jed. How can we get a recording of this, Jed?
I will circulate it. Jamal's already said he's got it. So I will circulate a copy of this tomorrow. Oh, and before we leave, I would be remiss if I did not pay a few bills. I wanted to say thank you to our sponsors, the Buccaneer, St. Thomas and St. Croix Cancer Specialists, Dr. Gary Jett, Fly the Whale, and Sweet Lime Furnishings. So thank you to our sponsors for helping us put together this event. Thank you guys for coming out. I'm sure there's some more refreshments, but let's keep the conversation going, all right?